It is just past midnight in the Russian capital of St. Petersburg. The streets are empty, temperatures are well below freezing, and most of the city has gone to sleep. But inside a royal palace in the center of the city, a trap is being set. A party is being planned for just one person. While the guest is on his way, men inside the palace are carefully lacing cakes and wine with poison. The man headed for this ambush is Grigori Rasputin, a mystical healer who has become a deeply polarizing and controversial figure within the Russian government. A gang of high society elites has organized this elaborate plan to kill and dispose of him, taking a massive risk to murder a single mystic in the dead of night. To understand why these men felt this assassination was their only option, we have to hit pause on the night of the murder and rewind to Rasputin's rise from a remote village to the heights of the imperial court. Rasputin grew up in a small farming village in Siberia. He was an illiterate peasant who lived a normal life, working on a farm with his wife and children. When he was 28, something changed. Following a sudden religious awakening, he left his family behind to begin a wandering pilgrimage across Russia. As he moved from town to town, Rasputin's charisma and claims of healing abilities began to attract followers. Priests and villagers were captivated by his preaching, and he slowly built a reputation as a holy man with divine gifts. By 1905, that reputation reached the Empress of Russia, who asked Rasputin to help her son. The young boy suffered from hemophilia, a rare condition where the blood doesn't clot, making even minor injuries potentially fatal. Rasputin took away the boy's medication and began to pray, and miraculously, the child's condition improved. This single event earned Rasputin the complete trust of the Empress. She became close friends with the healer, eventually depending on him for personal and political advice. While he maintained a holy public image, Rasputin's private life was very different. He was known to be a heavy drinker who held frequent parties and had constant affairs with his followers. His behavior became so notorious that in 1915, the police established a secret surveillance team to follow him every day. On February 19th, their logs show Rasputin leaving a building with 2 women and not returning home until 3 in the morning. On March 10th, police tracked him meeting with a prostitute, and on May 12th, he was seen locking a different woman in a room in his flat. These reports of drunken parties and prostitutes became a near-constant feature of his surveillance file. Despite this mounting evidence of his behavior, the Empress remained his protector, and Rasputin used that connection to gain a significant amount of power. He began making his own political decisions, directly appointing new government ministers and offering strategic advice on how to conduct the ongoing war. To the public, the Tsar and Empress had become followers of Rasputin's own agenda. His transition from a religious healer to someone dictating state policy is what finally pushed the public over the edge. By late 1916, public anger was widespread. Media censorship was strict, but newspapers were choosing to pay heavy fines just to publish stories about Rasputin's influence over the government. This frustration finally surfaced in November 1916, when politician Vladimir Purishkevich gave a speech to the Russian parliament, becoming the first official to openly denounce Rasputin's role at court. Felix Yusupov, a member of the royal family, was in the audience that day. He already held a deep hatred for Rasputin and believed the healer had to be removed to protect the future of Russia. Yusupov contacted Purishkevich, and they soon met on a train to finalize a plan. They were joined by the Tsar's cousin, Grand Duke Dmitry, as well as a military doctor and a lieutenant. This alliance between royals, politicians, and military officers shows that the decision to kill Rasputin had become a matter of national concern among the country's elite. Returning to the night of the assassination, the group chose Yusupov's palace in the center of the city as the site for their trap. At 1 a.m., Yusupov left to pick up Rasputin. He was driven by Dr. Lazard, who had put on a chauffeur's uniform to avoid suspicion. When they returned to the palace, Lazard parked the car near the entrance in a way that would shield Rasputin from being seen by anyone on the street. With the conspirators waiting in the shadows and the poisoned food ready, the trap was set.
Killing Grigori Rasputin meant getting past 3 separate security agencies and a dedicated network of spies tracking his every move in St. Petersburg. To bypass that physical wall, Felix Yusupov spent a month playing the patient. He faked severe chest pains, booking multiple private sessions to experience the mystic's healing powers and slowly earning his trust. During these meetings, Rasputin repeatedly asked to meet Yusupov's 21-year-old wife, Irina. Yusupov used this to bait the trap. He invited the notorious ladies' man to a private party to finally introduce them. A frontal assault on a heavily guarded target was guaranteed to fail. Striking him required an intimate, psychological lure tailored exactly to his personal weaknesses. Once inside the Yusupov palace, the conspirators would isolate their target in a basement dining room. The room's thick concrete walls would neutralize the sound of any screams or gunshots. This diagram illustrates the core of their strategy. The plan was to offer their guest cakes and wine heavily laced with cyanide. The chemical dosage was mathematically calculated to shut down his vital organs in exactly 15 minutes. With the target dead, Vladimir Perishkovich would take the victim's clothes to his specialized train. They would burn the garments in the furnace and hide the getaway car in a cargo wagon. The group would then walk to a secondary vehicle, drive back to the palace, wrap the body, and throw it straight into the freezing river to erase all physical evidence. The conspirators had engineered a sterile mathematical blueprint. Success relied entirely on flawless chronological execution from start to finish. Managing a multi-stage operation with so many moving parts is notoriously difficult without a proper system to track everything. Today, entrepreneurs avoid these logistical disasters by using Odoo, an all-in-one management software that interconnects your business apps so you never drop the ball. On the freezing night of the 29th, the assassin's rigid timeline immediately cracked. Perishkovich waited nervously at his train until Dr. L, the medical expert crucial to handling the poison, arrived 20 minutes behind schedule. When they finally drove to the palace, the side gates were unexpectedly locked. Rather than risk suspicion, they were forced to slowly circle the block in the cold while Dr. L waited for someone to open the entrance. Before the target was even in the building, the over-engineered clockwork of their operation was already jamming against the friction of reality. The foundation of the conspiracy required Rasputin to vanish without a trace. He had agreed to keep the late-night meeting an absolute secret, yet he couldn't resist bragging. Before stepping out into the cold, he explicitly told both his daughter and his secretary exactly where he was going. Unaware of this leak, the assassins scrambled to prepare the palace. Elle grated the cyanide into the cake cream and wine, while the others scattered half-eaten food and played records upstairs to simulate a party. As the clock struck midnight, the core objective of a clean disappearance had already been fatally sabotaged by a combination of the assassin's sloppy timing and the victim's massive ego. At roughly 12:15, Yusupov and Dr. L drove to pick up their target. When they returned, Yusupov guided Rasputin down into the isolated basement, while the rest of the gang retreated to the upper floor. For the next 30 minutes, the men stood silently at the top of the staircase. They strained to hear the muffled conversation below, filtering through the constant scratching of the spinning gramophone record. Yusupov abruptly ran up the stairs to deliver a panicked update. Rasputin was flatly refusing to eat or drink anything. Yusupov returned to the basement. Another agonizing half-hour passed before the men upstairs finally heard the distinct sound of 2 corks popping, followed by the sharp clink of glass. The critical milestone was achieved. The poison was ingested, theoretically locking Rasputin into the lethal 15-minute countdown. Look at the timeline now. 15 minutes passed, the calculated window for organ failure, but the target showed absolutely no biological effects. 30 minutes went by, and his demeanor remained completely normal. Another 30 minutes dragged on. The muffled conversation carried on entirely uninterrupted. An entire hour after ingesting a lethal dose of cyanide, the man was still talking. Unable to comprehend what he was looking at, a terrified Yusupov abandoned the basement and rushed back up the staircase for a second time. The strict mathematical logic of their operation had broken down completely. The failure of this clinical strike accidentally birthed the enduring historical legend of an unkillable mystic. Prince Yusupov sat in his basement, watching a nightmare unfold. Glass after glass of poisoned wine went down, and Grigori Rasputin just kept talking. These men were wealthy aristocrats, used to getting their way, but they were not professional killers. Their calculated assassination plot was crumbling, and sheer, unfiltered panic began to set in. Exhausting his patience, Yusupov bolted upstairs, grabbed a revolver, ran back down to the basement, and fired a single shot directly into Rasputin. The heavy body hit the floor with a thud. Rasputin let out a few weak breaths, twitched, and finally went still. Confident the ordeal was over, the assassins killed the lights and locked the door. To finalize the cover-up, they took Rasputin's heavy coat and dressed a young lieutenant in it, sending him toward the train station to act as a decoy for any trailing spies. For a brief, quiet moment, the group believed their plan had succeeded. But that sense of security completely blinded them to the disaster waiting in the dark below. Back upstairs, Yusupov and his co-conspirator, Purishkovich, were catching their breath when they heard a sound from the basement. Heavy, staggering footsteps were coming from behind the locked door. In disbelief, the man they thought was dead was back on his feet, bursting out into the freezing courtyard and staggering toward the palace exit. Purishkovich grabbed his gun and sprinted after him into the snow. He leveled his weapon at the fleeing figure and fired 2 frantic shots. He missed both times. The silence of the night was shattered. Gunshots rang out across the grounds, echoing in front of random civilians who happened to be walking past the palace gates. Desperate to stop him before he reached the street, Purishkovich fired 2 more times. Both bullets struck Rasputin in the back, dropping him into the snow inches from the gate. The gunfire immediately drew the attention of 2 palace guards. Purishkovich met them at the gate and admitted to the murder on the spot. To his relief, the guards shared his hatred for Rasputin and agreed to hide the body. Ultimately, Rasputin was brought down not by a master plan, but by desperate, noisy brute force in a highly public courtyard. The logistics of the night continued to fail. The decoy team returned from the train station with Rasputin's clothes still in hand. The train's stove had been far too small to burn the heavy coat and boots. Out of time, the assassins dragged the body back inside, wrapped it in a heavy curtain, and shoved it into the back of a car with the unburned clothes. They hit the road, driving slowly to avoid suspicion. By 5 in the morning, they reached the Petrovsky Bridge. They tied weights to the bundle and threw it into a hole in the frozen river, along with the remaining evidence. But in their exhausted rush, they had been careless. They left massive bloodstains smeared across the palace courtyard and realized too late that they had forgotten to dispose of one of Rasputin's shoes. The exhaustion and panic of the night had dismantled their cover-up. Their perfect plan had left behind a trail of physical evidence that would be impossible to explain away. 2 days later, the conspirators' secret completely collapsed. Pedestrians on the Petrovsky Bridge spotted fresh blood on the railing, and looking down at the frozen river below, they saw a single dark boot sticking out from the ice. Police followed the marks on the bridge down to the river, searched the area, and quickly pulled Rasputin's frozen body from under the ice. The incompetence of the cover-up meant there was no mystery to solve. By the time the body was pulled onto the bank, the identity of the killers was an open secret to everyone in Russia. Despite leaving a massive trail of evidence and a public confession to the guards, the assassins faced almost no real legal consequences. The political reality of 1916 made justice impossible. Arresting high-profile aristocrats for killing the most hated man in the country was deemed a risk the fragile government simply couldn't take. This paralysis allowed the minor conspirators to simply flee the country. Purishkovich remained in Russia, though he died of illness just a few years later. Prince Yusupov, the mastermind of the plot, was merely exiled. He spent the remainder of his long life in France. He lived peacefully with his wife, Irina, avoiding the wrath of the revolution that would claim the family he tried to save. Rasputin's death wasn't a supernatural event. It was a messy, amateurish slaughter. It was a moment of chaotic violence that perfectly mirrored the final unraveling days of the Russian Empire itself.